que comenzamos ayer. Ahora sí está grabando, ahora sí está grabando. Vamos para allá. Vamos a terminar el capítulo. Estamos terminando el libro. Estamos terminando el libro. Qué emoción más emocionante. Chévere, chévere. Okay, guys. So yesterday the last part that we were studying was this one. We were talking about, I think you watched a video about the Congress of Vienna. Congress of Vienna was a very important event after the Allies defeat Mr. Napoleon Bonaparte. And they tried to reorganize the map of Europe. And the map of Europe, and it looks something like this during those years, okay? So this was the result of the Congress of Vienna. And also the French community, they had to pay 700 million francs to rebuild Europe because they were the one who destroyed some of the areas here in Europe because they invaded. Using the leader of Mr. Napoleon Bonaparte, who died, who was sent to stay in an island, and he died 4 years later in the Caribbean Sea. I wanted to find out. Let me see if I can Google. Let me see if I can Google where Napoleon Bonaparte died. What island? Let me Google it. ¿Dónde murió Napoleón Bonaparte? Napoleón Bonaparte dice Napoleón Bonaparte en Casa London, Santa Elena. ¿Cómo así? ¿Cómo así? Déjame ver. Donde murió, muerte dudosa. Napoleón murió en una isla en Santa Elena con el estómago afectado por úlceras. Los médicos británicos dictaminaron cáncer, pese al forense describía una hepatitis tópica. En 1962, un dentista sueco analista de DNA que Napoleón concluyó que fue envenenado con arsénico. Su madre. Es una isla, la isla se llama Santa Elena. La isla de Santa Elena en el Caribe. Okay. So in that island he died. All right, no problem. So we resolved that mystery. Although there's another student who just arrived, Mr. Alba, Jan Alba. Welcome to our class. Now let's continue. Next Congress. No, this is not important. This part is important. The Congress of Vienna restored the all European monarchies. This is important. All the monarchy came back to their countries, and royal family returned to power in Spain, Portugal, and the Italian states. In France, Louis XVIII took the throne with the Bourbon family back in power. The new king, however, did have to accept a constitution that left from the reform of the French Revolution in place. And remember, in that constitution, they limit the power of the king or the one who was in power. Okay, and also they try to divide the three power of the governments. Okay, let's continue. Okay, let's move on and go to the independence movement here in Europe. It says, inspired by revolutionary ideas in Europe, Latin American colonies began to win their independence. Latin American independence. European powers had ruled Latin America for 300 years since the arrival of Cristobal Colon. Remember, that was in 1492, 1492. Since that year, we've been colonized by some countries from Europe. Countries like England, like France, Portugal, Spain, Netherlands, and so on. European power had ruled in America for 300 years. The people living in these countries, these colonies, now wanted to control their own affairs. In the 1800s, they launched a series of revolts to throw off the European rule. Now, in Haiti, Haiti was the first country. Now, if I ask you who was the first country who got his independence, was Haiti. Haiti, a Caribbean island under French rule, was the first colony in Latin America to gain independence. In the 1790s, Toussaint Louverture himself, a freed slave, led a rebellion of the island African slave. That island is Haiti. Although Napoleon sent an army to retake the island, Haitian, that's the way they call it, people from Haiti, Haitian fighters defeat the French troop. So in 1804, Haiti declared its independence. En 1804 declararon su independencia. Revolution in South America. The Spain government had adopted a more liberal constitution in 1812, but it still denied colonies representation in the Spanish government and maintained rich control over colonies. No eran nada de justos, no había ningún representante de la colonia allá en España y tampoco el control sobre las colonias era muy rígida. Latin American colonies were angry at their continued lack of political and economic power. Now, over here in this map, you see all the different years where these countries got their independence. Over here, Mexico in 1821 is the same here in Panama, is the same year, 1821. Now, the thing is that the difference that they got it, I think last week it was a Mexican Independence Day. Last week, I think. Yes. So it's we are in September. Yes, September they celebrate Independence Day. So in 18, so and we got our independence here in November, 28th of November. 28th November 1821. Over here now Haiti in 1804, Colombia and Venezuela, 1890, Peru 1824. Bolivia 25, Brazil 1822, and so on. They arrive. Yeah, people are arriving late. In my class. Okay, let's move on, guys. Let's move on. Okay, now the revolutionary leader Simon Bolivar. Now he's the leader who helped us to regain our liberty here in America. The leader Simon Bolivar and Jose San Martin, who was from Argentina, Jose San Martin, led independence movement across the continent. Simon Bolivar eventually served as a president of several nations in Latin America. Yeah, he was the leader here. Now, one by one, the colonies threw off European rule. Neither Spain nor Portugal could hold on to their new world empire. By 1831, a dozen of Latin American nations had won their freedom. Now let's talk a little bit about Mexico. In Mexican independence, in 1810, Father Miguel Hidalgo, a priest who served a poor Mexican parish in Dolores, that's a town, called his parish to pray for by ringing the bell atop of the church. Instead of leading the people in prayer, Hidalgo issued what came to be known as El Grito de Dolores. It's like here in Panama, El Grito de Independencia en la Villa Los Santos. Well, here in Mexico, they call it El Grito de Dolores in that year. And he was promoted for Miguel Hidalgo. Hidalgo argued the people of his parish to fight for rights and for economic justice for the people. He demanded racial equality and the redistribution of land to the poor in Mexico. Hidalgo was eventually caught and executed for his rebellion and his radical ideas about the poor. Another priest, Jose Morelos, took up the cause for Mexico. Jose Morelos. Now over here is Hidalgo and then Jose Morelos. Hidalgo and Morelos. These are the two very famous leaders in this revolution. Morelos led many followers in the fight for 4 years until he also caught and was executed in 1815. So in 1821, Mexico finally gained its independence. Now, after they got the independence, all the countries in Latin America, they had to create a new document, the constitutional government. So it says, so they adopted Enlightenment principle and used the United States Constitution as the base for their own founding documents, a constitution. So the first Latin American constitution enacted in Chile and Venezuela. So over here were the first documents, constitution documents created in Chile and in Venezuela in 1811, 1812. Set up a representative government that guarantees the right and liberty of citizens. These first constitutions did not sufficiently separate the power of government. Remember, the government was supposed to be divided in three parts: el legislativo, el judicial, y el presidencial. So those are the three powers that the Constitution had to separate. But, however, and created a weak executive branches, it says. Okay, now let's watch, as a conclusion of this chapter, let's watch a video that talks about independence here in Latin America and the leader, Mr. Simón Bolívar, a Venezuelan guy.
Bogotá, Colombia. Cairo, Egypt. New York, New York. 3 different cities on 3 separate continents. Yet all 3 pay homage to Simón Bolívar, a military and political leader who helped Latin America gain its independence from Spain in the early 19th century. In 1783, Simón Bolívar was born in Caracas, Venezuela, a colony of Spain. He belonged to a social class known as Creoles, wealthy Latin Americans of European descent who owned ranches, mines, and businesses in South America. Bolívar's family owned several gold and copper mines. After the death of his parents, Bolívar moved to Spain and completed his formal education in Europe. It was there that he was first exposed to the Enlightenment ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and the concept of representative government that had been forged in the wake of the American and French revolutions. Bolívar longed to liberate his people from Spanish control and bring a representative government to Venezuela. He also sought to abolish slavery, calling it the daughter of darkness. In 1808, after Napoleon Bonaparte named his brother Joseph the King of Spain and all of its colonies, Bolívar joined the fight for Venezuelan independence. The First Republic of Venezuela was established after an uprising in 1810, but it was toppled by Spanish forces in 1812. Bolívar restored the Venezuelan Republic in 1813 after several military engagements known as the Admirable Campaign. During the campaign, Bolívar, in a bold maneuver, led his troops over the Andes Mountains to surprise Spanish forces in Bogotá. After a series of victories, his people proclaimed him El Libertador, or the Liberator. Bolívar continued to sweep through Latin America, securing an essential alliance with the Argentinian general José de San Martín. Together, they liberated Peru. In 1825, the Congress of Upper Peru created the Republic of Bolivia to honor Bolívar. In a speech called the Angostura Address, Bolívar said, "The most perfect system of government is that which results in the greatest possible measure of happiness and the maximum of social security and political stability." Bolívar helped create Gran Colombia, a federation that is now the countries of Colombia, Venezuela, Panama, and Ecuador. Although the federation would ultimately fail, Bolívar acknowledged his people's successful fight for independence, telling them, "Those who served the revolution have plowed the sea." The countries that had formed Gran Colombia went on to govern themselves independently. Simón Bolívar died in 1830. To this day, he stands as a source of inspiration in Latin America and throughout the world for his dedication to the Enlightenment ideas of liberty, equality, and fraternity.
watch another video. Jesus, come on. Okay. Let's watch the other video that I have for you guys. Okay, this is about the independence. What it says, let me see. It says Latin America independence.
Toward the close of the 18th century, the revolutionary bug that had spread throughout Europe and North America made its way to Latin America.
Finally, after hundreds of years of European domination, the people of Latin America were ready to ring the bells of freedom.
Like the disenfranchised of the American and European revolutions, the lower classes of Latin society had reached their fill.
Creoles, mestizos, and mulattoes, who were all of mixed ancestral descent, who were no longer willing to take a back seat to those of pure European blood.
Thus, revolution came to Latin America. In Haiti, revolution was led by Toussaint Louverture.
As a free man, Louverture led the native, enslaved population of Haiti in revolt against their European masters.
Occurring in 1791, this rebellion was victorious, seeing the freedom of enslaved Haitians within a decade.
Although the year 1802 saw them once again threatened by the forces of Napoleon, who desired to retake Haiti, the freedom-hungry Haitians refused to be vanquished.
Finally, in 1804, the Haitians declared their official independence.
Perhaps just as significant, their success rocked the institution of slavery all over the Americas.
In Mexico, the Catholic priest Miguel Hidalgo also decided it was time to throw off the chains of Europe.
On September 16, 1810, he and his followers rose up in revolution against Spain.
However, they were not as successful as their Haitian counterparts.
Although they had some initial success, they were unable to take the capital city.
Hidalgo was captured and executed in 1811.
Despite this, September 16th is commemorated as Mexico's Independence Day.
Taking up Hidalgo's revolutionary mantle, rebels were finally able to overthrow the Spanish.
In 1820s, the Free Republic of Mexico was born.
Similar scenes played out in Central America as local leaders rebelled against Spain and together created the United Provinces of Central America.
Although they began as one, these free areas soon became the independent states of Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Costa Rica, and El Salvador.
Perhaps the most famous of all 19th century Latin American revolutions occurred in South America.
Led by Simón Bolívar, known to history as the Liberator and Republic in Venezuela, began to form.
Following this, the areas of Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, and Ecuador were liberated.
As other South American territories began to rebel against Spain, Bolívar had a vision for the formation of one nation under the name of Gran Colombia.
However, feuding among the groups made this impossible.
Instead, independent nations like
Gracias. Okay, guys, with the deal, then we finish this chapter about the spread of revolutionary ideas. Now, next week, we're gonna talk about the Industrial Revolution. Okay, it's only 2 pages, too easy this chapter. Okay, and then we'll start introducing and trying to get into the war and World War I and World War II and different aspects that happened during the year. Now, the thing is, here in this book, I think we'll have time to study, because I think you didn't have time to study the Incas, the Mayas, and the Aztecas, right? You never touched those civilizations. So I'm gonna try to summarize, and the last 3 classes, I think I'm gonna go back and try to give you a review about these 3 civilizations here in America: the Aztecas, the Mayas, and the Incas. Okay, guys? Okay, now remember, complete vocabulary and also the assessment that is already in NEO. All the questions that you need to complete. Okay, do you have any question? Question. Simons, no question. Kelly Chu, no question. Brittany, no. María, Daniela, no. Tú, María. ¿Cómo te sientes? ¿Cómo van los brackets, Julieta? ¿Todo bien? Sí, hazme así, va bien. Creo que te pusieron ahora en los dientes, ¿verdad? Sí, todo bien, perfecto. Ok. Bueno, chicos, nos vemos pues la otra semana. Pórtense bien. Pinto, andas perdido, Pinto.